And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 744. Continuing our team by team previews to get you ready for the 2025 fantasy baseball season. We head to San Diego. Talk about the San Diego Padres, a team that's still a very good looking team, but right now seems like they want to trade people and cry poor. It's a messy situation with ownership and down there right now, but the team still looks good on paper. To help us break that down for the upcoming season is a good friend of mine, a good friend of the show, good friend of many in the fantasy baseball world and the poker world. You can find his podcast, Read 'em and Weep Podcasts, on Twitter at Sammy Reid FI. That still makes me laugh every time I see that for behind the scenes stories. The one, the only Sammy Reid. How we doing, my friends?
I'm doing awesome, Bubba. Thank you for having me. It's nice that we have this little annual tradition going. I feel like I had some misses last year on my own Padres. Maybe a blind spot for me, but we'll get them back this year, buddy.
I feel like a lot of people come back on and talk about the misses because I think we're always either so optimistic or so pessimistic about our teams. It's like there's never really an even keel ground.
Yeah, I'm
That's
usually
just
I'm
how it
usually
goes.
pessimistic. And
Yes.
I remember last year you're like, "So what do you think about Michael King?" And I was like, "Nah, dude, I'm not quite sure about that." And then we drafted Barf out in the city last year, and I was talking to Dalton Del Don, and he's like, "Hey, you know who I like on your team?" I'm like, "Who?" He's like, "Michael King, man. What do you think?" And I'm like, I'm not so sure, man. I don't know if I see it." And then Michael King was a complete smash and dunk. So got to take the L on that one.
No, it's all good. I recorded the Giants preview with Mason, and that was basically a therapy session for the two of us. So if anybody performs well on the Giants, we will be wrong. Let's put it that way. When things are all said and done, so it's just yeah, that's how these go for sure. Before we talk Padres, let everybody know about the podcast and what else you got going on.
Yeah, man. Raising two little kids, so I think my days of producing content, at least on a regular basis, are going to be pretty few and far between. And just shout out to you guys, man. Guys like you and Ryan and a lot of other people in the industry, Vlad, who have like little kids and still manage to do content. It's just like, how do you do it? Like, I can barely get through my day.
We don't
It's
sleep.
just
We don't
it's
sleep.
so
It's
so
so
crazy.
good.
So hats off to y'all, man.
Thank you. But yeah, check out the poker pod, folks. It's a fun one with Sammy when he's got it out there because he's a poker savant, is the way I say it. He just kind of flies by night, goes out there, takes people's money, comes home. It's there's more
Well,
to
yeah,
it, but
yeah.
that's the way I visualize it.
Not always like that, but I appreciate the kind words, and I'll just say, it's even just producing that sort of content has been pretty inconsistent for me. Didn't record podcasts during football season because we're doing the Gilcast and
Mhm.
just grinding props and DFS and all this stuff, and it's like, man, I just don't have enough hours in the day. So now that football season's over, it's back to poker podcast season. So let's get it.
Beautiful. All right, let's talk Padres before we get into the players on the squad. I want to ask you what were your thoughts on how the 2024 season went for the Padres?
Man, I hate to relive this because I feel like I have some PTSD. Maybe I've blanked it out. Like what happened last year? I don't remember.
Yeah.
No, I think it's been the story of kind of the last 3 years for the Padres where we had the chance. Like it was there for the taking, right? We had this series against the Dodgers, and I think a lot of people felt this way that whoever won that series was going to go on and win the World Series.
Mhm.
And we had the Dodgers, we had them pinned down and they got out of it and they ended up winning and they ended up winning the World Series. So, obviously a really successful season on many fronts, breakout performances by, King and Jackson Merrill, the return of Fernando Tatis, some Luis Ariz action, adding a little swagger, all these things. Robert Suarez was a revelation. I mean, so many great things happened for the Padres, but in the end, just didn't get it done. And it feels like that's been the story, a day late and a buck short. And no matter how much talent you put out there, I mean, you cannot blink when you're facing a team like the Dodgers. I mean, they just have too much. And to take this kind of scrappy underdog and be like, yo, we can do this. We have them. And then not be able to finish it off, man. It's frustrating. I know as a Giants fan, anytime the Dodgers win, it hurts your soul. It hurts mine too. And it was just a couple years ago where it felt like the Padres had defeated them. right? We beat them in the NLDS and then faced Philadelphia, and Philadelphia whooped our ass. And it's like, yo, that was not the World Series. You still have series to win. And we thought that was the year that we could make it, didn't make it. And it's, now it's frustrating. Now, no Juan Soto and no championships. So here we are.
Yeah, man. For those that for some reason don't know, when Juan Soto came over, that was Sammy's dog before when he was still at the Nationals. Like when that happened, it was like the stars aligned. Like what the heck just happened there? I thought we'd never see Sammy again.
I called my doctor, man. I was like, Doc, I've had an erection for 6 months. What do I do?
Exactly. What pills? Like, yeah. And so we all thought that was going to be it. But I root for the Padres. I love rooting for the Padres because A, they're a fun ball club, and B, they had the Dodgers right there. It's just like, okay, we're not going to do it, so let the Padres do it. But I digress. The D-backs did it for us at least once. That was nice. We'll see where it goes this year. So let's talk this year. And a lot of the same players are in play, which is, I guess, a good thing. We'll see how that plays out. And we'll start with Fernando Tatis Jr., who played 102 games last year. As we know, he had the shoulder injury and some other stuff that he's been lingering with in recent years, steroid allegation, all that kind of stuff. Played the 102 games. We saw good production. ADP's 11 over the last 2 weeks of OCs, basically. But he's gone anywhere between 7 and 15. That's why my bigger question, besides do you believe in what production he's going to have, is he's one of the most polarizing potential first-round picks when it comes to ADP. So where do you stand on Tatis this year?
Yeah, it's been kind of this tale because Tatis was one of those guys who it's like, wow, if this guy plays a full season, he's like a 40-40 lock, essentially. Who can you say that about? It was like him and Ronald Acuna.
Yep.
And then all the shit happened, right? The injury, the PED usage, and then he comes back and he was good last year. He was good, but he wasn't like, oh, I'm slugging 600 and stealing a base every other day. He was just solid. And, certainly he, in some ways, when you look at his actual production versus his XBAs and his X production, he kind of underproduced, right? Like he had a 276 batting average. His expected batting average was 298. Really good. 538 slugging versus 492 actual. And so, you can't just say, oh, that's what he should have done, so that's what he'll do next year. But I think he did underperform, and to still have a solid power speed combo where he's at, only playing 102 games, leads me to be a little bit more on the optimistic side for the future rather than the pessimistic side. But certainly I'll feel a lot better if we see kind of that return to massive Tatis, and we haven't seen that in 2 years. So I certainly think there is some risk associated with him, but I'm on the optimistic side. He's going, 11th on average, man. I'm right around number 7, number 8 overall with him.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, he's one that I was all in last year. So maybe I'm just more biasy in my brain because I'm with you. The ceiling he has is higher than most by far, but we've seen the floor also, and that's been terrifying to see. So it's just what risk reward do you want to take there? The team's going to be good, like I said. It's going to be followed with Manny Machado in that lineup, which no matter what Manny does, even though he started the year at DH last year because he couldn't throw the ball yet because of his shoulder, still hit 29 jacks, 11 steals, hit 275, just continually hits close to 30 home runs, hits 270 plus, just produces year after year after year. ADP's 34. If I take third base early, he's one of my favorite targets. Where do you sit on Machado?
Yeah, kind of the same. I mean, there's not that much to go into on Machado, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just he's just rock solid, right? He's going to hit 270-ish. He's going to hit 30 homers-ish, 80 runs, 90 RBIs, 5 to 10 steals. And that's what he's going to do. And I'll be shocked the year he doesn't do it. It'll probably be once he turns 37 or so. Yep. But he's just one of those guys where he's such a good ball player. He was an excellent prospect. He's excellent defensively. And I think sometimes these guys who are I don't mean to get too in the weeds here, but are just good ball players tend to age better than others, right? These one-trick pony type of guys.
Yep.
And Machado just he is what he is. He's not going to hit 40 homers at this point. He's not going to steal 20 bases. He's a little too old guy runny for that. But he does the Freddie Freeman thing where he's still able to steal 10 because he's smart. And he's just rock solid. And so I think you have obviously J-Ram at the top of the third base tier. And then you have this chunk of 4 guys, right? Before you get into the lower tiers. It's like Devers, Chisholm, Riley, and Machado.
Yep.
And obviously they're all going to give you a little bit different. I do have Machado at the back of that tier. He doesn't run like Jazz does. I think that Riley has kind of a bigger ceiling than Machado does. Like, I think Riley has a 300 average in his bag. I think he could potentially run into 40 homers one of these years. I don't think Machado's quite there. And then Devers, I just think is like kind of like Machado, just a little better in every way. So I put Machado at the back of those. But like, to your point, when you're trying to take a third baseman early, you don't need to take the top of that tier. A lot of times you just want to take the last guy in the tier, and get the value there. And I think Machado really fits that bill.
Yeah, and I just love it with we talk early picks, like we said, Tatis, there's like a floor and a ceiling we've seen where Machado is just like you can pencil his numbers in and walk away, which sometimes very reassuring with an early pick. Like, yes, you want ceilings as well, but you can also take a risk later if you want. So that's kind of the yin and the yang between those. And the Devers Machado comps that just goes on and on and on. They're so darn similar in the draft room.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point, because certainly you'd love your first and second and third round picks to like go nuclear, like
Yes.
obviously. But like, it hurts you more when they tank than it does if they outperform their expectation by 15%. You know what I mean? Then that helps you. So these kind of like rock solid guys to begin the draft, as opposed to like, oh, I'm wish casting that this is going to be the year the guy breaks out, Wyatt Langford or whoever, who I actually like. But, let's not act like there's not a floor there. Whereas with a guy like Machado, like the floor is just super high. And, if you start your draft off with 4 or 5 or 6 of those guys that are just like rock solid producers, man, you're way ahead of the game. And to your point, you can just take your risks a little bit later.
And a guy people took risks on last year and it paid off well is one Jackson Merrill. So I'm really curious your thoughts here, because I love the guy. I don't know many people that don't love the guy, but again, I always try to tell myself, okay, calm down, Bubba. He's 22. We've done it for 1 year. So part of me goes, well, it means he can be better in reality. And then there's also, well, do they make adjustments to him? So on and so forth. If you like him, you got to pay for him. ADP's 27 right now, but the skills look pretty. Like, I thought he should have won the Rookie of the Year over Skeens personally, because he did it longer and blah blah blah. But Skeens is still deserving. But I like Merrill. I want to get your thoughts, because you probably watched him more than I did. So where do you sit on him entering this season?
Yeah, I mean, God, what a revelation he was, man. I mean, incredible to do what he did at 21 years old. 21 years old in the major leagues, and he goes 24-16 and hit 292. I mean, just really, really great. So when you're thinking about Merrill, he's going 27 overall. He's going, mid to late second round in 15 teamers. It's a little bit of a high price for me. And I think, if I'm going to guess, once the main event rolls around, I could easily see Merrill getting pushed back into the third round because of all the pitching that's going to get pushed up. Is the way the main event works. And I could see him being one of those guys that ends up falling. That's a point where I'd really, really like to take him, because I think he's excellent. One of the things that I think stands out about Merrill is his ability to make contact and not strike out. And it's just a really great skill in a young player, because it keeps his floor high. Like, he struck out, he had a 17.6% K rate in the minors in 2022. In 2023, it was 12.1%. And then he goes to the major leagues last year, and it's 17%. And he hits 292. I mean, this guy is just really, really good at making contact. And I think that's, for a young player, man, that is really, really special. I think one of the things that we do, and I've done this forever, is it's like, oh man, this guy did this at age 21. He's going to be so much better next year, right? Because, it's just like linear growth. And obviously ball players don't work like that. That's not to say that Merrill couldn't get better, but I think if you're drafting him, you're pumped if he does exactly what he did last year, right? And I think that his average will continue to stay high. The challenge with Merrill, I think, is the challenge of upside in terms of, does he have 30 to 35 home run pop?
Okay.
I think he does in the future. As soon as this year, it's a little iffy. I'm not sure that he does. Does he have the ability to steal 20 to 30 bags? Again, not quite sure about that. I wouldn't be surprised if he stole close to 20, but anything more than that, it would be a pretty big jump up. So a second round pick for a guy that I'm not quite sure can hit 30 or steal 20 plus, it's a little iffy. That being said, I think, I'm way less concerned about his floor than I would be a lot of players his age. And I think he's an excellent player. If he's around in the third round, I'd love him. As a second round pick, I'm still a little dubious about the upside that he offers.
Yeah, a lot of great things that I took away from that because I was just curious. Are you watching him kind of nailed some of the questions I had on what you think the next steps would be? Because I agree, is some of these guys just are freaks and they just take off and they go. But more often than not, there's growing pains, there's sophomore slumps. Like there's a reason there's phrases made for this situation. Like it happens a lot, and it's nothing against Jackson Merrill's skill set potentially, but the way you're describing him, like it's like I like him first off. I don't have many shares because of the price tag. I'm with you there. Second off, like the 20-ish to 25 homers, the 20-ish steals or whatever the numbers you get thrown out there with the good average. If you believe in projections, that is Michael Harris the second who goes in the third round.
Oh God, I was just gonna say
Yeah,
that.
like that's like as you're talking, I'm saying, okay, that's Michael Harris, who I always have a hard time with because projections love him. He always gets hurt and then he falls short of the projections. But per game pace, he's
Yeah,
doing his thing.
I just want to go off on this because last year in 15 teamers, at the end of the second round, Michael Harris was one of my prime targets because I'm like, wow, I get somebody like Acuna or Bobby Witt or something, and I follow it up with a guy who's going to hit close to 300 and go 20-20. And that sounds awesome. But that 300-ish 20-20 almost feels close to the ceiling. Like there doesn't seem to be much more meat on that bone. So if anything goes wrong, an injury, just the league adjusting. In Michael Harris's case, obviously there was injuries, but what if he doesn't hit at the top? What if he gets dropped down to 7th, 8th, 9th because that lineup's so good and the counting stats aren't there? Like, is it that great taking it's like 20-20 sounds awesome. 18-18, not as awesome. I mean, it's almost the same thing, but it's a lack of upside. And if anything happens, you just have like an okay player. And then you need to hit those picks. Obviously, floor is important and those guys offer it, but they still also, with a second round pick, you want the ability to be like, oh yeah, that guy's going in the first round next year. He earned it.
Yeah, you want the floor with the potential for another step type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you. Awesome. That's great little insight there for sure. Xander Bogaerts, another boring veteran but like I'd say boring in a nice way, was Xander. The dude's gonna hit you 275 again, sometimes closer to 300 in reality. With Bogaerts, gonna hit you 15-ish home runs, steal you maybe 10 bags, 15 bags. You know who he is. ADP right now for Xander's 160. It's like, to me, it's almost still too high for what I like, but I get it in deeper leagues. I'll say that much. What's your thoughts on Xander?
Yeah, I've been kind of a Xander hater, and I'm almost afraid that he's going to turn into like Eric Hosmer for me, where I'm just so angry that my team signed him to like this egregious like 7-8 year contract for all this money, and it's like, what do you say you do here, man? Like the last 5 years, Xander's slugging percentage has gone 502, 493, 456, 440, and last year 381, and he's now 32 years old.
Yeah, it's not
And
great, Bob.
it's not great, Bob. It's, does he hit a lot of homers? No, but at least he doesn't steal a lot of bases either. It's just like I mean, I don't, he's a fine ball player. Fine ball player. We love the things he brings to the table in an IRL perspective, but like for fantasy, the upside is waning and the floor is getting lower. And as he loses his ability to like make hard contact, he just becomes like an okay average guy who doesn't fill up the juice categories. And it's not exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, I've been an anti-Xander guy for a long time. Bloomfield used to give me crap for that, not so much anymore. But yeah, it's a rough one.
Yeah, don't love it.
All right, you can try to sell me on Luis Ariz if you like. Again, I think you have a lot of really good real life ball players in San Diego. Fantasy's tricky. One thing, like we do like a fab preview on Thursday nights, and we always joke when we get to the San Diego schedule, like we can move on now because they play the same 9 guys. They don't platoon. This is what it is, and it works. Like I said, in real life, they win baseball games. That's all they care about. Fantasy, it's tricky. Like Luis Ariz, it's the batting average version of a rabbit. He doesn't steal, doesn't hit for power, maybe scores runs, but he'll hit well over 300 almost every single year. So if that's your jam, that's your thing. I can't do it, but a lot of successful. I always have to use this caveat. A lot of successful fantasy players can build around Luis Ariz. I cannot. I cannot.
Bubba, I have no further analysis for you on Luis Ariz.
Okay, I'm like, just tell me if there's anything else I'm missing here because I've listened to actual, like, I don't know if it's Phil's, but that group we were kind of talking about before the show.
Yeah,
there's been a couple of them that have been supremely successful building around this, and I'm like, I can't stomach it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the thing is that batting average is, to me, kind of the rarest thing that we have in from an offensive perspective in fantasy. You can find guys who hit homers late in the draft. You can find guys who steal bases later in the draft. It is very, very hard to find a 300 hitter anywhere but the first few rounds. It's really difficult. I don't think I'm good enough to put my fantasy plan in a spot where Luis Ariz is part of that. Because, the 4 homers in a season, it is so hard to overcome. It is so hard to overcome. And, the reality is one of the years where, he hit 354 one year. Last year was 314. 314 is really good. But if he has a bad BABIP year and, only hits 286 or something, he is fucking useless, bro. Like we can't have it. And, I think the guy's great. I think there's something wonderful about, kind of a Tony Gwynn light because he's so different than the type of player, the archetype that we see prevalent in our game today. There are no guys like him. He's a throwback. He's got this really specific skill, and frankly, it's awesome. But from a fantasy perspective, I just don't really want him on my team. Just like I didn't really want Billy Hamilton on my team, right? The batting average version of the rabbit. It's just like I want well-rounded guys with upside, and Ariz just doesn't have it. I mean, his upside is 10 homers, maybe. If he hits 10 homers, you're pumped.
Yeah, now we're having a conversation at least.
Yeah.
We can like almost work with that.
Yeah. But, it was a couple years ago. I think it was his first big batting average year back on Minnesota where I was pretty in on him. I think it was 2022 when he ended up hitting, like 316, but he went 8-4. And I think you could get him like past pick 300 that year. Yes. And I was all in on that, right? That was like, oh, like somebody who does something useful late in the draft. This is great. That's not his cost anymore, but he's the same guy.
That is the problem. Yes. Again, no shade on Ariz, but for fantasy, not it, folks. Jake Cronenworth had that big Korea series last year that got drafted everywhere. And in the end, still was not like 241, 17 homers, 83 RBIs, 72 runs. Like all in all, not horrible. Like it was pretty good, especially because you probably drafted him in deeper leagues. Right now, his ADP's 303, Sammy. Is there any interest in that at 303?
Yeah, I mean, 303 is okay. It's you can say he's cheap, and that's good. The reality is, and I hate to be like so pessimistic. I guess I liked, some of our really good guys.
I had Daniel Prepis on my show to do the Angels. You're good.
He just talked shit about every Angel.
Pretty much. He either loved them or literally Nolan Shenwell. His thing because he fucking sucks.
I had a lot of Nolan Shenwell shares last year, by the way. Too. So little sore about that. I mean, Cronenworth, just like, who is Jake Cronenworth? He is a 31-year-old who will probably hit 240 with 15 homers. That's who he is. does that have some sort of value in very deep leagues? Absolutely. And if San Diego can insist on continuing to hit him cleanup, which I don't know is really viable when you have like Jackson Merrill on your team, but if he continues to get a catbird seat in the lineup and can get close to 80 RBIs, that has some sort of value. Am I going out of my way to draft Jake Cronenworth? No, I'm not. And if you look at some of the projection systems, you look at the bat, you look at ATC, those systems are not optimistic on Jake Cronenworth. They do not like him at all. And I don't like him much either, frankly. So
it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Well, this is only to get better for you, I promise.
Yeah.
I just put outfield platoon. So I'm going to throw some names out here, and I don't think this will take as long as most would think. So they went and signed the platoon of Jason Hayward and Connor Joe. I think we can kind of ignore that unless you really want to.
Wish they didn't.
Yeah, that one's. I was like, good. That's part of my joke of they're crying poor thing. But then they have Tirso or Nellis. I believe I might be mispronouncing that.
Yes.
And early in draft season, like DC seasons, I was all about this life because I like the pedigree. They keep adding guys, so I'm getting kind of more cautious with this idea. But for a team that has this old but productive infield, this seems like a move to make. Just my 2 cents. What's your thoughts on Tirso or Nellis in the system?
Yeah, so if you look at Roster Resource right now, Roster Resource has him as the starting designated hitter for the Padres. Obviously, we're very early in spring training. Everyone's just making guesses now. If I were going to guess, I think Tirso doesn't break camp with the team.
Okay.
However, I mean, and that's really up in the air. I don't have a strong lean, but my lean is slightly against it. I think we could actually see somebody like Gavin Sheets make the roster, which again doesn't wet our whistle very much. But Gavin Sheets, he's got that week where he's got 5 righties. You're like, yeah, maybe.
Bingo.
Yeah. But I do think he's really interesting. I think Tirso is interesting. So, last year he was a little old for his level, right? 24 years old at AAA, but he hit 297 with 23 homers, 7 steals. And if you look at like his K and walk rates, he's always been a pretty low K guy and he walks. And so it's like this guy has some sort of ability here. Like he really does. Now, is he going to be an MVP candidate? Probably not. He's a AAA at 24 years old. But I mean, think of the guys you just ran out there, man. I'm talking about Gavin Sheets. We're talking about Connor Joe, Jason Hayward. I think old Tirso here will get, even if he doesn't break with the team, I think he will get a lot of run this year and he'll get a lot of ABs. And I think he may have the skills to actually do something with him. So, when you're talking like late DC picks, I think he's a really, really good one.
Yep. Well, that makes me feel a little better because, very, very optimistic there. Catching. This one gets more entertaining by the day. Last year, Luis Campusano, they sent to AAA. They basically said, not today, son. And to be fair, when he came to spring with that goofy-ass batting stance, he probably deserved it. But he's back. They bring Elias Diaz back, who was the backup to Higgy before last year. So right now it's Campusano, Elias Diaz. They're on roster resources, the starter and bench. But they're also saying that Brett Sullivan and Martin Maldonado will be competing with them for the 2 catching jobs. What are your thoughts here? Is any of it even fan? Like I still feel like Campusano can hit, but it's
I think he can.
I think
Campusano can hit. Now, like he's a catcher, right? These guys do not progress linearly at all, right?
No.
Sometimes we've seen these catchers like bandy about in the league, and then all of a sudden at age 30, it's like they just like break out, and you're like, oh, I remember that guy. So who's to say if Campusano can do that? I think he is by far and away got the most hitting upside of any of these guys.
Yep.
If Martin Maldonado makes the roster as anything more than a bullpen catcher, I'm gonna be so tilted, bro.
I'm with you. I didn't even know he was on the roster till I read it like a week ago and a thing. I'm like, wait. How's he in this same sentence with these people?
I mean, dude, God, what is he doing behind the scenes to continue to get major league work? I mean, he can't hit the baseball.
Yeah.
He can't hit the baseball at all. Like, what's happening here?
That is a skill set that is necessary. Yes.
Yeah. Like Campusano's still young, right? He's still young. He's 26 years old. Last year he definitely tanked out in a lot of ways, right? His average was way down. He hit 319 the year before. Last year it was like 227, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But he still hit 8 homers in 299 plate appearances, right? So there's a scenario here where Campusano just comes back and he has his shit together, right?
Yep.
That's really what it's going to take. It's like, can you mature? Can you put in an off season of hard work and show the team that you're going to be the guy here? Because this catching position for San Diego for a long time, like many years now, has been a revolving door of like, who can do the job, and it hasn't been anybody. Campusano's got ability. He's got a high average ceiling, especially for a catcher. If your catcher hits 275 with 13 homers, buddy, you're pumped.
Yes.
And I think Campusano has that sort of upside. Now, do I think he just gets a full complement of starters reps out there? No. I mean, Elias Diaz is a trusted veteran. He's pretty decent in his own right.
Yep.
I'll bet that he probably starts the season as the catcher one, but Campusano is a guy that I really have my eye on, even if he's not draftable come main event draft season. He's a guy that I believe people will be spending fab on this year. And if he's like your third catcher in a DC or something like that, I think it's a pretty good bet.
Yeah, and one thing especially you said there that I wrote about when I saw this first, their competing thing.
Mm.
I said Diaz will make the roster because at worst he's a very good veteran backup for what's needed there. And I said the biggest thing that I'm reading out of this is it's an organization telling their young player to get it together, like get it figured out. Like that. That's the way I see it. It's like, hey,
Absolutely.
this is your last chance. We have Ethan Salas that's chomping at the bit, like a year away, probably, maybe 2 at the most. Like
Yeah, you better.
he's coming for you. So get
Yeah,
it figured out, kid. And
yeah.
like we're gonna throw Martin Maldonado's name in there to show you how bad you need to get it together. Like right now, that's kind of how I read it. It's like, hey, kid, like it's time to shit or get off the pot, basically. Like,
Yeah, great call. Great call. Like definitely a motivation thing. And I think we saw these trade rumors, San Diego, in
a
the
lot of
offseason.
early
People
spring
are asking
news is
for
literally
Dallas.
just like, come on, boys.
Yeah.
Like, let's go.
Yeah. Please, AJ Preller, do not trade Salas. Like, we need him.
No.
We
Yeah,
need him.
you need that badly, very
Yeah.
badly.
Yeah.
All right, let's head to the bump, and let's start with the ace that is still on the team. With after those trade rumors seem to calm down a bit, and that is Dylan Cease. Cease coming off a really strong season, 189 innings. Ratios were some of the best he's had. Whip wise, the ERA was solid as well. Strikeouts once again, 200 plus Ks. Just a consistent force on the mound. And his ADP right now is 46. So where are you on Dylan Cease? You're on mute, I think.
Yeah. Pretty. What's that?
Oh, never mind. You're good. It was breaking up for a second. You're good.
Sorry. Little internet glitch. I'm pretty
Good.
optimistic on Cease. We talk about volume being a big deal in our game, and Dylan Cease, I believe, leads the major leagues in innings pitched over the last 5 years.
Yep.
Really impressive. He's got great stuff. He's a dog out there, and when you're a good pitcher on a good team, you're going to get your wins. And the question with Cease was always, will he get his whip down? Right? This guy can strike people out. He can pitch innings. Can he get that whip down? If he's got a 125 or 130 whip over 190 innings, it kind of hurts. So he has shown the market ability to do that. Getting off the White Sox and getting onto a good team is great. And, I think he's a pretty locked in, like top 12-ish starter. I think I have him somewhere around 11 or 12 right there.
Yeah, I'm way optimistic on him. So I get flack for it. I have him like 6th. And I know it's crazy to some, but I think just the volume and the K upside brings me into, again, the whip could crush me. But if he continues to just do what he's doing or improve, I'm in.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk Michael King. You mentioned him earlier in the show here. And I was with you. I was suspect to like what innings are we looking at? How's this going to work? 173 innings, 2.95 ERA. Strikeouts were great. And to give you a little credit here, there was like a hiccup in the middle of the season. It looked like it was going to happen. Looked like things were going on. And then he just found it again and wiped out the mat. So,
yeah, he was so good down the stretch, man.
Yeah. So the question is like, is ADP 66? Do we pay for this great year at 66, or do we still have some cautiousness here?
Well, I'm gonna double down, I think, on my dubious nature on King. And this feels bad because like King is really good. Like you've watched him pitch. He is good. Like he's got very good stuff. He had a really strong K rate last year, 27.7%. Uh the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause about just drafting him this high is, his Sierra was 363. That's really
Mhm.
good. But his actual ERA was 295, right? He outperformed himself a little bit. And I just think, it's easy to say, okay, King was a reliever. He got to his 173 innings last year. They can push him farther. He can get to 190 or 200. And I think that's it's a little scary and a little problematic, frankly, thinking that way. Just like with Jackson Merrill, oh, he did this at 21. He'll definitely get better next year. I'm not quite sure that's the case. Now, I don't have any reason skills wise to think that King is going to do any worse than he did last year, at least like on a rate basis. But man, like when you're talking like, yeah, top 12 starter, I think he's a little outside of that. There are guys that I like better than him kind of going in that range. And, I'm very scared that it's gonna come back and bite me again. But man, I'm way bigger on Cease, I'd say, than Michael King.
I'm with you as well. Like I like King. I haven't forced the hand on King. He's kind of in the glob of guys I like, and I think I have like one share. So I'm like, okay, I'll get a piece, but I'm not all in on the. I loved what we saw, but I'm not all there for sure.
Yeah.
You Darvish keeps getting older, keeps producing when on the mound. Had his off the field issues last year, personal issues, a little bit of injury as well. But again, when he pitched fine. Strikeouts keep dwindling as you get older, but ratios are there. He can eat innings, maybe. We haven't seen that in the last couple of years. With you, Darvish, though, his ADP is 233 now. So where do you sit on you as he's kind of heading towards the end of his career?
Yeah, it's really interesting because people are seeing what's going on with Darvish, right?
Mhm.
And so his price keeps getting to a point where it's like, well, you Darvish is pretty good here.
Yep.
You mentioned the dwindling K rate. Like last 5 years, 31.3%, then 29.2, then a big drop, 25.6, 24.6, 23.6 last year. 23.6% from a guy who a few years ago was atop the all-time in all of baseball strikeout percentage. And now he's years old and he's coming off a season where he struck out less than 24% of players. It's obviously not a good trend when you're 38 years old. We're kind of seeing it from a velocity perspective as well. He was up near 96 5 years ago. Half 95, 94.7, down to 94.0 last year. So it's like if he and I know I love you, right? I think he's been a great pitcher for a long time. We see all his stuff on Pitching Ninja. He's fun. He's unique. He's got all these different pitches. Like he's great. But I think that it's a ticking time bomb in many ways. And we can look at like the numbers last year and be like, wow, yeah, look at that whip. It's a really low whip. It's like really good. But I think we're very, very close to the end. Does the grenade blow up this year? I mean, I'm not smart enough to know that, but I feel pretty confident that that grenade is going to blow up very soon. So, is the ADP fair for what kind of pitcher he is? Yeah, but I think there's a lot of downside here also.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, where the ADP is, there's some like definite, maybe more upside plays to take
Hmm.
there at pitching. Where I think we know who Darvish is, and you're hoping for a floor at this point in time. So that makes it
Yeah,
tricky as well.
yeah. Upside really isn't there anymore.
No, it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah,
All right, new San Diego Padre, Nick Pivetta. I loved this signing for to give him a solid third or fourth, depends on where they have you Darvish when the season actually gets going. Pivetta, 145 innings. We haven't seen the big workload since 2022, but still a steady, like basically 150-ish plus guy. Elite strikeout stuff of late. Ratios can fluctuate, but He'll go out there and he'll be a bulldog for a handful of innings, and you'll see what you get. He's shown good stuff out of the bullpen too. If worse comes to worse, as like a long man, but that's not the plan for now. ADP is around 195. Where do you stand on Pavetta?
Oh, give me that smoke, baby. I am in on this. So first off, what was it, like 4 years, 55 million?
Very affordable. It was a joke. When I saw that price, I was like, you got to be kidding me.
What?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you're just like, holy shit, how did we get that? I mean, it wasn't quite Luka Doncic going to the Lakers or anything, but this is a pretty big get for not a lot of money. I'm surprised there wasn't another team out there. I'm surprised the Dodgers didn't do it just for shits and giggles.
I'm with you. Yeah, they wouldn't even know the money was gone. They could have deferred it. It's all good.
Just be like, hey, can we give you 50 mil in 2035? It'd be like, sure. So obviously Pavetta's got his warts. He gives up a lot of home runs. This guy throws a lot of meatballs. To your point, hasn't thrown a ton of innings in the last couple of years. Always seems to have some issues. All this stuff. That being said, over the last 2 years, his K minus walk rate is 22.8%. Among all pitchers with at least 200 innings pitched, that is 5th in baseball.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
5th in baseball. Like, it's Skubal, Glasnow, Chris Sale, Ryan, and then it's Nick Pivetta above Zach Wheeler and Logan Gilbert. And that's not to say he's a better pitcher than those guys, but it is to say this guy is going around pick 200 right now. He's out of Fenway Park and going to San Diego. Give it to me. I want it. Put it on my fantasy.
I'm honestly surprised the ADP hasn't gone up higher. It's gone up like 20 picks, give or take. I was like, he's going to be around pick 150. Yeah, by the time things are said and done. I've been surprised. It's been a slow crawl up, and maybe main event season will be where you'll see the hike. These guys are going to walk in and go, I want Pavetta just like you did, and that's going to turn into that game. For good reasons.
Like Phil Dussault will say something in a Slack one time, and people will be like, oh, yeah.
Now he's a 6th round pick. No.
Yeah.
All right. I want to ask you about Kyle Hart. See what you've heard here. Coming over from KBO. Like when I looked at his numbers, I read like a small blurb on him. Surprisingly efficient. Like he used to play in the bigs, for those that don't know. Went to Korea, did the KBO thing. We've seen this dance. But like I looked at his swinging strike rates. I looked at his strikeout rates over there. Very nice. Ground ball situation. Now, does it translate? Here's the $1 million question. What are you kind of hearing? What are your thoughts on Kyle Hart joining you guys? A very affordable 1-year deal too.
Yeah, I feel like if Hart ends up being a left-handed Nick Martinez, we'll be really excited about it. I tend to be really optimistic about guys who go overseas and then figure stuff out and come back. I tend to really, really like those guys. Hart is a these things are not that great. I did show some stuff over there to like really know, but judging by just what I see on paper, the KBO is not Major League Baseball, right? So if you're having trouble hitting 90 miles an hour with your fastball, I tend to not be very optimistic about it. So I would love to see the Padres do something where he is not part of the starting rotation. RIP Joe Musgrove, tough scene.
Yeah,
but
tough.
Yeah, I'd love to see what he's all about, but I probably will not have Hart on my fantasy teams. I just think there's too much working against him in terms of age and an express lack of like skill with being able to blow hitters away.
For your KBO reference, I think when COVID hit and we all were degenerates playing KBO DFS, I think they compared the KBO to like a level between like AA and AAA or something along those lines. So yeah, I'm with you on that as well. Any other starting pitchers to keep an eye on, not prospect related? I know you guys have a couple guys in the minors, but anybody else to keep an eye on?
I think that if the Padres end up improving their 5th starter spot, it will be from another team, not from the minor leagues. I think that's the most likely scenario.
All right, let's head to the bullpen. Robert Suarez had a phenomenal season, 34 years old. So kind of I don't want to say it came out of nowhere. It felt like it came out of nowhere. ADP's 109 for Suarez. There's rumors of trades. Again, we'll see if that continues. Those rumors have quieted down across the team of late. You have Jason Adam, Jeremiah Estrada. You got a nice looking bullpen there. So how do we approach Robert Suarez and his surrounding cast?
So this is my like semi, lukewarm take. Even though the talks have quieted down, I feel pretty strongly that Robert Suarez will be traded. If not before the season, then at some point during the season and maybe early in the season. I think that AJ Preller has shown a proclivity to trade closers, to cycle through closers, whether it's Kimbrel or Melanson or Josh Hader. He likes to make big moves for closers, and then he will deal them and try to get value for them. And I don't think there is any one player possibly on the Padres that screams sell high like Suarez,
100%.
right? He had a great year last year. Loved him. He throws hard. He's got a pretty devastating split change. I mean, the guy was great. But to your point, he's 34 years old, and you can find closers.
Yep.
And so for me, I look at who's behind him. I like the talent of Estrada a lot, but I would say that Jason Adam has been a guy who every time he's been called on in the last couple of years behind Pete Fairbanks in Tampa Bay, he's been really good at getting that job done. I am still going to leave the light on for my boy Matsui.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good one.
Yeah, he's left-handed, so obviously some stuff is working against him. But he had a 27% K rate and a 116 whip last year in his first taste of the major leagues. I mean, he's 29 years old. Like, he's got plenty of stuff in front of him. So these are guys that I am going to take some shots on, possibly late in DCs. I don't see Suarez making it through the season with the Padres. And frankly, he lived such a kind of charmed life last year that I think regression is, not only possible, but probably should be expected.
Yep, we are on the same page on Suarez. I have 0 shares all offseason because I felt they'd trade him. And I thought he overachieved. Like, he did great, but I thought he overachieved. A lot of red flags pointing that direction. And Jason Adam has been a very, very fun target late in drafts. So I'm with you.
Yeah, and the other thing about Suarez is it's like if he gets traded, he's not so established as a closer that he would definitely go have a closing job somewhere else. Like, a good team gets him and makes him their setup man or something like that. Like, that's a good role for him. Yep. It's very risky on Suarez. Very risky. He is definitely in a void for me. That second tier of closers.
Yep, totally agree. All right, let's talk prospects. It feels like Ethan Salas is again like a year away or so. But what other prospects may we see this year? They're all pretty young. It feels like.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. So San Diego a couple years ago had this really great farm system that it's like, either through gradually being traded, mostly traded by AJ Preller. A lot of that has been kind of so I hate to not give anything here, but like, who do I see from the minor leagues this year actually making a legitimate impact with San Diego? I actually don't see a lot. I mean, Tirso is Ornelas is the obvious answer to me, but I don't know if that's cheating because he may break camp with the team. I just think he probably doesn't. But I think it's one of those things where, like, if in 2 weeks they say, okay, Tirso's not going to break camp with the team, I think he's the obvious answer, is the guy from the minor leagues that's going to make an impact with San Diego.
Yep, I'm with you. It's they've made good use out of those prospects, so hopefully they can get a little more juice out of the use. Well, kind of. I won't tilt you on that one. Actually, never mind. We're gonna stop there.
Well, it's just this goddamn carousel that AJ Preller, like, it's just like, what kind of cocaine is he doing this year? It's like, is he going to do the kind of cocaine where he trades all his prospects for major league guys, or is he going to do the thing where he sells the major league guys and gets a bunch of prospects? He just like continues to circle it. It's just the Preller prospect Ponzi scheme. I mean, it's just I don't know what he's doing, but it's fun. But
Yes.
yeah, we're at that stage right now where the minor leagues are a little bit barren in terms of like who can contribute this year. And I think you're right. I think Salas is still 18 right now.
Yeah, he's pretty
So
young.
yeah,
You
I would be shocked if we saw him get a major league at bat this
got
year.
like it's Virez or something like that. He's another like 18-year-old. So you got a couple young dudes that
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard the term the Preller vortex is what I've heard lately, which makes a lot of sense. All right, last question I have for you before we wrap it up here. What are your expectations for 2025?
So I would obviously be remiss, if I didn't mention that that the Dodgers are like the greatest a semblance of major league talent that we've ever seen on a field.
Yep.
So that kind of is what it is. I think the Padres will fight pretty hard with Arizona for second place here. Your goddamn team, man, the Giants, like they just have no good players and yet always seem to do a lot better than they should.
Yeah, they live in mediocrity. That's what they do.
Yeah, it's curse of like the Pittsburgh Steelers, something like that. It's
Yep.
just like, yeah, we're gonna hang out around 500, but I'm optimistic that the Padres are a playoff team, and I think it would be super sweet if this year everyone's just like, okay, hand it to the Dodgers. Who can beat them?
And then
And
someone
then
does.
yeah, and then the Padres actually do. This has basically been my pipe dream for about 11 years now, and it's never come to pass. But maybe the year that you don't expect it happens.
It's usually
Yeah,
how it works.
yeah.
I think you guys are a playoff team, especially adding Pavetta. That gives you guys three strong dudes. So you just got to get to the dance. Then it gets
Anything can
interesting.
happen.
Yes, especially as long as you have three starters, and then you put the bullpen in play. Like your team's built for that. You just got to get to the dance.
Yeah,
And
you got to get to the dance, and it's really going to take a couple of things, right? Tatis needs to come back. Tatis needs to be
yeah,
that MVP type of player because if you have him, and then you have a guy like Jackson Merrill and Manny Machado behind him being solid, then you're there. But it's without the kind of talent percolating in the minor leagues that can come up and help. It's kind of a house of cards in terms of you have one major injury or one guy that really doesn't perform this year that you're expecting,
true.
things get a lot harder. It's kind of a tightrope that the Padres are walking. So I hope I hope people stay healthy, and I hope Tatis comes back and starts being that guy again instead of just a good guy.
If he does, that'll be great. We'll see some more gifts of the good old middle finger at Dodgers fans in the stands. That'll be glorious indeed. But all right, my friend, we'll wrap it up there. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Make sure you all follow Sammy on Twitter at Sammy Reid FI and the Read 'em and Read podcast coming back your way shortly. But for now, this was Bench with Bubba, episode 744, your Padres team preview. Catch you all next time.